Across many parts of Brazil, particularly in older towns and rural villages, there is a belief that not every soul finds peace after death. Most people grow up hearing stories about ghosts, spirits, or strange presences that appear in the night. But in Brazilian folklore, there is a very specific type of spirit that people fear encountering. They are not violent monsters. They are not creatures from another world. They are something far more unsettling. They are human souls, souls that were never able to leave. These wandering spirits are known as Almas Penadas. The name translates roughly to restless souls or suffering souls, and according to countless stories passed down for generations, these spirits remain trapped between the world of the living and the world of the dead. They wander through empty streets. They move through forests. They appear near old churches and forgotten roads. And sometimes, when the night becomes too quiet, people claim they can hear them calling for help. The term Alma Penada carries a deep meaning within Brazilian culture. The word alma simply means soul, but penada comes from a word related to suffering, punishment, or pain. So when people speak of almas penadas, they are not talking about ordinary spirits. They are referring to souls that are trapped because something in their life remained unfinished, a promise that was never fulfilled, a mistake that was never forgiven, a burden that was never released. According to the stories, these souls cannot move on until something changes, until something is resolved, until the weight that binds them to the world of the living is finally lifted. Stories about restless spirits are not unique to Brazil. Many cultures around the world share similar beliefs. But the Brazilian idea of Almas Penadas developed through a mixture of influences: indigenous traditions, Portuguese Catholic beliefs, and African spiritual practices brought during the colonial era. Each of these traditions carried its own understanding of what happens after death. Over time, these beliefs blended together, and from that mixture came the idea that some souls remain behind, not because they want to haunt the living, but because something prevents them from leaving. Unlike the dramatic ghosts often seen in movies, Alma Penadas are usually described in subtle ways. Many witnesses say they appear as faint silhouettes, moving in the distance. Others describe pale figures standing silently beside roads or near old houses. Sometimes the spirits are not even seen at all. Instead, people report hearing sounds, footsteps in empty places, soft crying carried by the wind, or whispers that seem to come from nowhere. In some stories, the spirits appear wearing the same clothes they were buried in. In others, they appear as glowing figures surrounded by dim light. But one detail appears again and again in many of these accounts. The spirits rarely look directly at the living. They seem lost, as if they are searching for something they cannot find. One of the most common settings for stories involving Almas Penadas is the road. Long stretches of countryside road that pass through forests, hills, or isolated farmland. Travelers sometimes report seeing a lone figure walking ahead of them late at night. A person dressed in old clothing, moving slowly along the side of the road. When drivers approach, they sometimes slow down, expecting the person to step aside. But when they look again, the figure is gone. No footsteps, no sign that anyone was ever there. Some claim the figure simply fades into the darkness. Others believe the spirit was never fully part of the physical world to begin with. Another place where these spirits are often reported is near old churches and cemeteries. In small towns, especially those that have existed for centuries, it is common to hear stories about strange events near religious buildings after midnight. Caretakers sometimes claim to hear footsteps moving through empty courtyards. Residents living nearby speak of faint voices echoing through the night. Some say that these spirits gather near churches because they are seeking forgiveness. Others believe they are waiting for prayers. According to tradition, prayers offered for restless souls can help them finally find peace. Perhaps the most unsettling stories about Almas Penadas involve sound rather than sight. People often describe hearing distant crying during the late hours of the night, a voice that sounds human, but faint, almost as if it is carried through the air from a place far away. Sometimes the crying sounds like a woman, sometimes like a child, and sometimes it cannot be identified at all. Those who claim to have heard it often say the sound is filled with sadness, not anger, not rage, just sorrow, as if the spirit is trapped in a state of endless regret. Many explanations have been offered to explain why these souls cannot move on. In some stories, the spirit committed a serious wrongdoing during life and must remain until forgiveness is granted. In others, the soul died suddenly and never understood what happened. There are also legends of people who died while carrying powerful emotions, guilt, hatred, despair. These emotions, according to the stories, can bind a soul to the world long after the body has been buried. But the most common explanation is unfinished business, something left unresolved, a task never completed, a truth never revealed. Until that final piece is put in place, the spirit remains. Throughout history, people have tried many ways to help restless souls find peace. Religious prayers are among the most common. Families sometimes gather to pray specifically for the soul of someone who died under difficult circumstances. Candles are lit, masses are held, names are spoken aloud in the hope that the spirit will hear them. In other traditions, people leave offerings, water, food, or flowers placed near graves. These acts are meant to show compassion for the soul that cannot move on. Because unlike many ghost stories, the legend of Almas Penadas is not always about fear. Often, it is about empathy, about recognizing that suffering may continue even after death. Even today, stories about restless souls continue to appear. Residents of historic towns sometimes describe strange figures walking through streets long after midnight. Security guards working in old buildings report hearing footsteps in empty corridors. Drivers traveling through remote countryside occasionally claim to see figures standing beside the road. Skeptics often dismiss these experiences as tricks of the mind, shadows, fatigue, or the natural tendency of the human brain to imagine patterns in darkness. But for those who believe in the old stories, the explanation is much simpler. Some souls never truly leave. What makes the legend of Almas Penadas so powerful is not a single story. It is the number of stories. Different regions describe different spirits, different encounters, different locations. Yet the core idea remains the same. A soul trapped between worlds, a presence that cannot rest, a voice calling quietly through the darkness, and across generations, these stories continue to be told, not always as warnings, but as reminders that life, death, and memory may be more connected than we realize. Whether the stories of Almas Penadas are expressions of grief, cultural tradition, or something more mysterious, they remain deeply rooted in Brazilian folklore. They remind us that human life is filled with unfinished chapters, words never spoken, promises never kept, moments that leave lasting marks on those who experience them. And perhaps that is why the idea of restless souls continues to resonate across so many cultures. Because the thought that something of us might remain, searching, waiting, hoping for resolution, is both haunting and strangely human. So if one night you find yourself walking through an empty street and you hear footsteps behind you, slow, uncertain, almost hesitant, you might want to listen carefully, because sometimes the voices carried through the darkness are not meant to frighten the living. They are simply asking to finally be heard.